Hector was dead, but Troy was still standing. Achilles had killed the city's greatest defender, yet the gates remained closed, and the Greek army was still trapped outside the walls. After years of war, Troy had survived the strongest warrior Greece could send against it, so the city would not fall to strength. It would fall to a man who understood that walls did not need to be broken if the people behind them could be persuaded to open the gates themselves. His name was Odysseus. But winning Troy would prove far easier than returning home. How did the mind that ended the war become trapped in a journey that lasted another 10 years? The Iliad ends with Hector's funeral. It does not describe the wooden horse in full or carry the story to Troy's destruction. Those events belong to a wider tradition built from Greek epic, later poetry, drama, and Roman retellings. The city of Troy was real. But the horse, the gods, the monsters, and the adventures of Odysseus belong to literature and myth, not a direct military record. Still, the story asks a serious question about war. What happens when strength cannot solve the problem? After Hector's death, Troy still had its walls. The Greeks could dominate the field and kill the city's greatest defender, but they could not force their way inside. Achilles represented heroic violence. Odysseus represented something more dangerous. He understood the enemy's mind. Odysseus was king of Ithaca, a small island kingdom far from the richest centers of Greek power. He was a capable warrior, but ancient tradition remembers him above all for intelligence, patience, disguise, and manipulation. Achilles changed a battle through presence. When he entered the field, soldiers saw him and reacted. Odysseus changed a battle through expectation. He made people react to something that was not what it appeared to be. The Greeks had spent years attacking Troy from outside. Every failed assault confirmed the same fact. The walls were doing their job. Odysseus approached the problem differently. If the walls could not be broken, perhaps they could be made irrelevant. If the gates could not be forced open, perhaps the people of Troy could be persuaded to open them themselves. The wooden horse was not simply a container for soldiers. It was a story designed to enter the city before the army did. For years, Troy had lived under siege. Its people had watched warriors leave through the gates and return wounded, or not return at all. They had lost Hector. They had survived long enough for endurance itself to become part of their identity. But endurance creates two opposite conditions: confidence and exhaustion. A city that survives for years may begin to believe that survival proves it cannot be destroyed. At the same time, a population exhausted by war becomes desperate for any sign that the danger has passed. The Greek deception was built around those weaknesses. They constructed a great wooden horse. A chosen group of warriors hid inside it. The rest of the army burned parts of the camp, boarded the ships, and sailed out of sight. When the Trojans looked beyond their walls, the enemy appeared to be gone. After years of noise, there was silence. The Greeks had not defeated Troy's defenses. They had created a picture of victory and allowed the Trojans to complete it in their own minds. Later versions of the story add a Greek named Sinon, who tells the Trojans that the horse is a sacred offering. Other figures warn against trusting it. But the deception succeeds because it answers the question Troy once answered. Is the war finally over? The horse appears to say yes. This is the strategic brilliance associated with Odysseus. He gives the Trojans a conclusion they are emotionally prepared to accept. The horse is pulled toward the city. The gates Hector died protecting are opened from within. The people of Troy carry the hidden enemy inside themselves. No wall can defend against a threat that has already been accepted as harmless. The Trojans celebrate, guards relax, families gather. The horse remains inside the walls while the Greek fleet returns under darkness. Then the hidden warriors emerge. They kill the guards and open the gates. The army enters the city that had resisted it for years. Troy falls in a single night. In the literary tradition, the destruction is terrible. Houses burn, King Priam is killed, families are separated, some escape, while others are taken captive. This is where military genius becomes morally difficult. Odysseus has solved the problem, but the solution does not create a clean victory. It creates access. Once the gates are open, the destruction belongs to the entire army. The horse proves that intelligence can achieve what force cannot. It also proves that intelligence cannot control everything released by success. Hector had spent the war standing between Troy and this night. Odysseus was the man whose plan finally made that night possible. At dawn, Troy belongs to the Greeks. Strength killed the defender. Strategy defeated the city. But victory does not return Odysseus to the life he left behind. The Odyssey begins after the war, when the Greek heroes attempt to go home. It is not a historical travel journal. Its world contains gods, monsters, enchantment, and impossible geography. Yet beneath those supernatural events lies a human problem. How does a man leave war behind after war has taught him to survive through suspicion, deception, and violence? Odysseus believes the hardest challenge is over. He is wrong, he is patient, adaptable, and brilliant. He is also proud, and pride will turn escape into punishment. Odysseus and his men enter the cave of Polyphemus, the Cyclops. The giant traps them and kills members of the crew. Odysseus cannot defeat him through force, so he turns perception into a weapon. He tells the Cyclops that his name is Nobody. He gives Polyphemus wine, waits until he sleeps, and blinds him with a sharpened stake. When the wounded Cyclops calls for help and says that nobody is attacking him, the others leave him alone. Odysseus then hides his men beneath the animals, leaving the cave. It is another perfect victory of intelligence over strength. Then he makes a mistake. As the ship escapes, Odysseus reveals his true name. He wants Polyphemus to know who defeated him. At Troy, Odysseus understood the power of remaining hidden. At sea, he cannot resist claiming glory. The Cyclops calls upon his father, Poseidon, to punish him. In myth, the sea god becomes the force that prevents Odysseus from reaching home. In human terms, the episode exposes his weakness. Odysseus survives because he controls the story. He suffers because he wants credit for controlling it. The journey continues through places where every victory demands a price. Odysseus meets Circe, travels to the world of the dead, and hears warnings about the dangers ahead. He later approaches the Sirens, whose song draws sailors toward destruction. Odysseus wants to hear them, but he understands that he cannot trust himself near them. He orders his men to block their ears and tie him to the mast. He commands them not to release him, no matter what he says. He does not defeat temptation through willpower. He defeats it by creating restraints before temptation begins. But not every danger offers a clean solution. To pass between Scylla and Charybdis, Odysseus must choose between two threats. Avoiding one means moving closer to the other. Men die so that the ship can continue. This is not the clean intelligence of the wooden horse. It is command under conditions where every choice carries loss. Odysseus survives. His crew becomes smaller. The final disaster comes after repeated warnings not to harm the sacred cattle of the sun god. Odysseus's men kill them while he is absent. A storm destroys the ship. Every remaining companion dies. The commander who left Troy with ships and soldiers is now alone. This pattern defines the journey. Odysseus escapes danger after danger, but escape is not the same as victory. At Troy, success was measured by an open gate. At sea, success is reduced to one man remaining alive. For years, Calypso keeps him on her island. She offers safety and comfort, but she cannot offer Ithaca. Odysseus still wants his wife Penelope, his son Telemachus, and the kingdom that may no longer recognize him. The man who crossed the sea to destroy another city now wants only to see his own home again. When Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, he does not return as a visible king. He returns disguised as a beggar. This mirrors Troy. He entered the enemy city hidden inside a false object. Now he enters his own household hidden inside a false identity. During his absence, powerful men have occupied his home and pressured Penelope to choose a new husband. They consume his wealth and behave as if the king is dead. Odysseus does not reveal himself immediately. He watches. He tests loyalties. He reunites secretly with his son. He studies the house as if it were an enemy position. The habits that won Troy are now used to recover Ithaca. Disguise becomes reconnaissance. Patience becomes preparation. The homecoming becomes another operation. When Odysseus finally reveals himself, the return becomes violent. He and his allies kill the suitors and reclaim the household. The Odyssey presents this as restoration, but the scene also shows how difficult it is for Odysseus to leave war behind. He traps his enemies. He controls the room. He waits for the moment of revelation. Then he strikes. The logic of Troy has followed him home. Odysseus does not spend 10 years merely trying to find the correct route across the sea. He spends 10 years facing different forms of the same struggle. When should he hide? When should he reveal himself? When should he trust? When should he use force? And when does survival become another version of war? Hector and Odysseus stand on opposite sides of the same story. Hector loses the duel and becomes the moral center of a defeated city. Odysseus wins the war and spends years trying to recover the life that victory delayed. Hector's defining act is remaining visible outside the gate. Odysseus survives by hiding, inside the horse, behind a false name, beneath animals, and finally behind the appearance of a beggar. One man represents responsibility without escape. The other represents survival through adaptation. Both are flawed. Hector's honor contributes to the decision that kills him. Odysseus's intelligence saves him repeatedly, but his pride turns triumph into suffering. The fall of Troy is not the end of the war. It is the moment when the consequences divide. For Troy, the city is destroyed. For the Greeks, the journey home begins. And for Odysseus, the man who discovered how to enter the strongest city in legend, the greater challenge is not winning another battle. It is learning whether a man shaped by war can still return to the life he left before it. He won Troy in a single night. It took him 10 more years to reach home.